This
Brian.
conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 1:34 and open up the floor to any public comments.
Let's give it a second. It looks like there are a few on. And maybe what we can do, Brenda, along the way is if folks raise their hand or chat in the comment, we can give them a chance to raise a question or something.
Sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead and ask again if there are any public comments. This is the time. Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead on with the agenda, noting that we will allow for anyone that we may have missed as folks were filing in. I'd like to get a motion to pass resolution number 1, the March meeting minutes. Can I get well, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the March 23rd meeting minutes. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? All right, motion passes. I will now turn it over to Brian and Isabel to review the next agenda item.
Great. Actually, just a real quick update on our energy jobs report work that we do jointly with the EDCs through the Joint Committee. Just some background, as you know, we've been working with BW Research Partners, who has been working with the federal government for years on the U.S. Energy and Employment Report, which just came out yesterday. I'll give a few quick highlights of the national report in a second. We will engage in a PSA with BW Research again for the 2022 jobs report. We'll be doing that over the summer and then working as we have in the past with the EDCs and the Joint Committee on the data collection that they pull together and then the production of the draft reports. You might recall we disseminate those in the winter, spring of each year. Stay tuned for that. So yeah, I was mentioning that yesterday the U.S. Department of Energy released their user report for 2021. Just a couple of highlights from that. I'll just kind of read verbatim from some of the executive summary. In 2021, the U.S. energy sector jobs grew 4% over 2020, outpacing the overall U.S. employment, which climbed 2.8% in the same time period. The energy sector added more than 300,000 jobs, increasing from 7.5 million total energy jobs in 2020 to more than 7.8 million in 2021. Just a quick aside, our clean energy industry report focuses on clean energy jobs per Connecticut's policies. The federal job report, actually, if you dig into it, has a lot of fossil jobs in there. So we don't count those in our job reports, but they do. Energy sector jobs for the purpose of this report include all professional construction, utility operations, and production occupations associated with energy infrastructure, production, and use, including the manufacturing of motor vehicles, which was interesting. Motor vehicles is kind of one of the largest job sectors in the report. I'll send out a link to the report in the chat in a second. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the energy sector was one of the nation's fastest growing markets. From 2015 to 2019, the annual growth rate for energy employment in the United States was 3%, double the 1.5% job growth in the US economy. In 2020, the energy sector was deeply impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent economic fallout. The energy sector lost nearly 800,000 jobs, contracting at a faster rate than jobs economy-wide. Last year's user showed that by the end of 2020, the energy sector was beginning to rebound, adding back 560,000 jobs. So just a little interesting tidbit on the COVID-19 impact is we featured some of Connecticut's impact in the last couple of years that we've done the clean energy industry reports. I pulled out a few other data points. Energy efficiency. The energy efficiency group was hit especially hard by the 2019 pandemic, resulting in across-the-board decline amounting to a total loss of 270,000 jobs. Despite modest gains in 2021, energy efficiency grew more slowly than the energy sector as a whole, 2.7% versus 4%, and did not make up job losses in 2020. Again, this is nationally, not in Connecticut. This sector remains one of the largest energy technology groups with over 2.1 million workers, which is what we see here in Connecticut in our clean energy industry reports. On electric power generation, the two largest employers in renewable energy, solar and wind, both increased in 2021. Solar had the largest gains both in terms of new jobs and percent growth. Let's see. And then some high-level diversity ones, which really were interesting because we pulled this data in our report as well. The energy workforce is 74% male, making it less gender diverse than the US workforce average, which is 53% male. Women make up 25% of the energy workforce, much less than the US average, which is 47%. There's a higher percentage of non-white workers in energy, 26% compared to 22% of the entire US workforce. However, the energy workforce has a lower than average percentage of Black and Latino workers. There are no technologies where Black workers are represented proportionally to their overall representation in the US workforce. Again, I think we see that data point in Connecticut as well. I know John Harity's not with us today, but he would be interested to know that I think this is the first time the user report actually reports union membership, which is something that we started to do several years ago. The proportion of union workers of those covered under a project labor agreement in the energy workforce is higher than the private sector, with 10% of workers represented by a union are covered by project labor agreement, compared to 6% within the private sector nationally. So those were a couple of just little tidbits I thought I'd pull out of the executive summary of the user report that was released yesterday. I'll chat through as we're kind of working through the meeting here today, just so folks can take a look at it. You know, that's the macro national number, all energy. Our clean energy industry report takes our public policy in Connecticut and focuses on clean energy jobs only. So anyways, just wanted to share that with the group. Not sure if there are any questions. Happy to take them.
Thank you for that, Brian. I'm interested in taking a look at that and some really interesting stats there. And it feels like the unions are definitely one of the pathways in which we could really promote diversity in the workforce. So my wheels are spinning there, and I look forward to having a conversation with John about that. Are there any other questions or comments about the report? Or initial reactions? All right, let's move on with the agenda.
All right. Okay, so let me set some context. And Isabel, I see you on as well. So this is a little poke here for you to get ready as we kind of jump into the presentation. But Connecticut has a shared clean energy facilities policy, a Scaf policy, which supports, it's essentially Connecticut's version of community solar, although it's technology agnostic. We'll get some details on Scaf from Isabel in a second. But I was having a conversation with Deep and OCC several weeks ago about a concept to try to enable Scaf to do what it does, which is deploy clean energy and provide subscriber savings to low to moderate income families, but to also see if there might not be other ways to encourage more energy efficiency, other clean energy policies within the context of Scaf. So we were discussing the concept that Pura was interested in us raising within the context of potential changes to Scaf at the regulatory level. that's just some context. We'll get into more detail. At a macro level, as many of you know, Connecticut has very ambitious public policies across the board. From last year's PA 21-48 to our ambitious weatherization goal of 88% by 2030. Energy affordability is front and center, as are vulnerable communities per Public Act 20-5. And many of us are focused in on Justice 40 goals, no less than 40% investment and benefit to vulnerable communities. Lots happening in behind the meter renewable energy, specifically as the market transitions from a net metering based compensation mechanism to a tariff based compensation mechanism, specifically providing additional incentives for low income families, families who reside in DECD determined distressed communities, or affordable housing based on some recent PURA decisions in a docket. And then energy storage solutions, trying to ensure that families have access to power in the event that the grid goes out, and allowing our utilities to dispatch batteries to reduce peak demand. So this is just to say that to the extent a policy like the Shared Clean Energy Facilities Program could encourage helping us achieve other policy objectives, then great. And that's what this concept that we'll talk about in a second is about. So let me introduce Isabel Hazelwood, who's with us here today from Eversource Energy, just to give us some background for those of you who need a refresher course on the Shared Clean Energy Facility policy. Is you there? You want to take over?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian, and good afternoon, everyone. As Brian mentioned, my name is Isabel. I'm with Eversource. I'm the manager for the Shared Clean Energy Facilities Program. So as Brian mentioned, the Scaf program is similar to community solar. So it provides an opportunity for customers to receive the benefits of solar energy without having to install solar on their home or business. And the way that our program is structured, it kind of centers around the utility company. We are responsible for both procuring the clean energy resources and then distributing bill credits to participating customers. So each year we run a procurement. The first 3 years of the program, we had a 25 megawatt capacity that actually just got doubled this year. So for the remaining 3 years of the program, we're going to be procuring 50 megawatts of clean energy projects. And then as those projects come online, we identify eligible customers and enroll them in the program to receive bill credits from the energy produced by these clean energy facilities. You can go to the next slide, please. So each customer that's enrolled in the program receives a bill credit that is based on a savings rate of 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour, and then their overall credit is sized to their average monthly usage. So whatever the individual customer's average monthly usage is, we multiply that by 2.5 cents. They receive that same amount each month for up to 20 years. The credit can stay with the customer. So if they move within Eversource's service territory, they can keep their credit with them. And so long as they remain in the service territory and they don't wish to terminate their subscription, they can continue to receive that on-bill credit. Next slide, please. So enrollment in the Scaf program is limited to certain types of customers. Most of the customers that we are going to be enrolling in the program are low or moderate income customers, landlords or other entities responsible for affordable housing facilities, low income service organizations, which are organizations that primarily serve low income customers, and small businesses. 80% of the customers that are enrolled in the program, we are enrolling through what we call an opt-out process. So that means that we pre-identify these eligible customers. mostly based on information in our billing system, but we also have a few partnerships to help us identify these eligible customers as well. And then we run what I'll call a modified lottery to select who becomes enrolled as a subscriber in the program. These customers are then notified that they've been selected for a subscription, and then if they don't want to participate in the program, they can opt out and decline to accept their bill credit. And then there is a small opportunity for what we call voluntary enrollment customers. So these are customers that are interested in the Scaf program and actually fill out an application to apply to the program. 20% of the subscriptions are available to those customers, and they're open to some other types of customers that aren't opt-out customers. So primarily residential customers that can't install solar on their home, as well as state and municipal customers and commercial customers. And then this is just to give you a sense of how we're distributing the subscriptions. So 20% of the subscriptions to each individual Scaf facility are going to be allocated to low-income customers. 40% of the subscriptions will be provided to a mix of low-income customers, moderate-income customers, affordable housing facilities, and low-income service organizations. And then an additional 20% is provided to small business customers. Those customers are all enrolled in the program through the opt-out manner that I just described, and then the remaining 20% is available for voluntary enrollment. And I think that's all I had. I'm happy to take any questions on just the overall program structure right now. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Brian to present his concept.
Any questions for Iz on Scaf right now would be great. And then Iz, before we transition, if you can speak to, after any questions, the request by Pura for us to redline the program manual, that will be a good lead for me in the concept. But any questions for Isabel just on Scaf? Many of you know about it. This is just all the details, all the hard work that's gone into structuring it and getting it to where it is today. Okay, cool. Iz, you want to give me that lead?
Yeah, sure. So with the program, we are still in the process of kind of fully finalizing the enrollment process. And as part of that, we are submitting some program documents to Pura, things like the program rules and other regulatory filings to kind of operationalize the program, and particularly for the subscriber side of things. So in a final decision that Pura issued back in September of last year, they had asked us to also file red lines to those program documents that would enable the concept that Brian's about to speak on to be incorporated into the program as an option for participants in the Scaf program. So we've been working with the Green Bank and other stakeholders to just talk about, if this concept that Brian's going to describe, is approved by Pura, how can we modify the program documents to enable customers to take that option?
Excellent. Thank you for that context setting, Isabel. So just going back to some of my earlier remarks, you've got a sense now of the Scaf program and it leading to the deployment of grid-tied clean energy systems that would provide the subscriber savings to participants. Recognizing that Connecticut has a lot of other public policies that we're trying to achieve, the question becomes, is there a way for us to enable Scaf to do more? It's a great program and it can possibly do more. So Joel, Ron, Steve, put your thinking caps on here too, because OCC and DEEP really wanted us to have this conversation within the joint committee to get your thoughts. And this is just a concept. So let's play this out. So the average, electric consumption per residential customer in Connecticut, we're just using a number here, 800 kilowatt hours per month. At that 2.5-cent subscriber savings would provide a $20 credit on the bill of participating Scaf customers. So that would lead to about $240 a year of annual subscriber savings that would show up on their bill, reducing the energy burden. And as Isabel pointed out, low to moderate income families would be the focus. So the question is, over a 20-year period, once you become a subscriber, that subscriber savings stays with you. So that $4,800 that you would receive over a 20-year subscription, the question becomes, is there a way we can turn that $4,800 that these participants would receive over 20 years into more energy burden reduction today? So you could think about that $240 per year of credit that they're receiving as their energy burden reduction. Is there a way for us to use that today to give them more savings than $240 today? So the concept, and again, this is a concept, I'll try to communicate Bureau Chief Hackett's thoughts in a second. But the concept was, if there was a way for us to assign those subscriber credits from a participant to the green bank could issue a bond, generate those bond proceeds based on the expected cash flow over a 20-year period, and give that value back to the participant today. Now, there would be a discount based on the yield of the bonds. I think I used in here a 5% discount over 20 years. So that present value of $4,800 today is about $3,000. So those funds would go to the Cnlm to provide additional incentives for participants, specifically low to moderate income families, to fill more of the gap. These aren't funds in lieu of existing programs. These would be in addition to. Now, one of the things Vicki had mentioned in our conversation with OCC several weeks ago, and John, feel free to help clarify some of these points, is maybe there's another mechanism rather than issuing a bond where you have a discount rate, whereby those subscriber savings could directly go towards, for example, an on-bill repayment for a heat loan, and just be used to help pay for the heat loan costs, or a portion of the heat loan costs. So that would definitely reduce the discount rate based on the interest rate of the heat loan. So Vicki was interested in exploring other options that EDCs might play a role in terms of, yes, collecting funds, or making sure that the funds that were sent to subscribers could be used to enable subscribers to do more things. And I'll talk about those things in a second, just a few use cases. But John, did I get that in general okay?
Yeah, that was perfect.
Cool. So what might participants do if we could transfer that money over? So this is the example of using the bond proceeds to give money back to the homeowner today. This is an example of one use case, and we're calling it the weatherization use case. So these are, Steve, you remember these numbers. These are old numbers, so we have to update these given inflation and all those sorts of things. But the point is still the same, is, for HES income eligible customers, there's, an installed cost to participate, and there's 100% support through the Cnlm for income eligible participants. There's a set of installation incentives. This may have changed. I think when we did this, Steve, this was in the middle of COVID, I think in the early 2000s. So, this may have changed as well, but, so there's an installed cost and then an incentive net against it. And then the installed cost of an air source heat pump with the incentives netted against it. So you could imagine this portfolio of measures leads to building envelope improvement, and then climate security, providing coolness during the summer and heat during the winter using efficient air source heat pumps. So that would leave, after the incentives, that would leave a gap, a delta of about $7,000 of installed cost after incentives. Those subscriber savings could be used. Again, this is the present value of that 4,800. This could be different to Vicky's comment. Could bring those installed costs down to $4,000, leaving that as the delta. Then what we did was we ran that $4,000 into the heat loan to assume what the estimated energy savings would be after all of these measures. And what's cool about all this is that in this example, the participant would now be receiving $380 of energy savings having done all these different measures, which is greater than the subscriber savings they would have received in the Scaf. So not only are we supporting the clean energy deployment policies of the state, but now we would be supporting the weatherization target of the state by creating jobs in this sector. So this is just, again, one example. You could think of a lot of different examples here, but the concept is how could we think about subscriber savings in a way that enables more public policy goals to be achieved. So if we took that estimated annual energy savings from weatherization of $800, less the debt service from the heat loan, that leaves $380 of savings in the pocket of homeowners, which is greater than the subscriber savings of $240 a year, providing them $140 of additional savings, to reduce energy burden. So that is a concept, broadly speaking. And there were a few questions that we wanted to tee up for the joint committee with respect to this. But any questions in general on the concept? And John, feel free to add if I missed anything too. Thank you.
Nope, I have nothing to add. Thanks, Brian.
Cool. All right, so let's just kind of dig in. Any thoughts on the concept, achieving more public policy objectives in this way? Again, the use cases, I think, however that value of the subscriber savings occurs, whether it can be directly applied or needs to float into a bond to generate the cash flow today, let's just assume that mechanism can happen. The idea for utilizing those resources as another source of funds to advance public policy. Any comments there?
Hey, Brian. So, Brenda here. I guess my question is focused on how this would, the positive impacts are there for the population that we're talking about. But what about the renter versus tenant relationship? If it's a complicated one, how do we kind of overcome that barrier to ensure that we don't leave anyone behind?
It's a great question, because I'll try to tee it up, and Isabel, feel free to jump into, and Ron, Joel, Steve, this is kind of the hardest problem of everything, right? So in the case of Scaf, right now it's a lottery. So it's an assignment to somebody. So that could mean that an affordable housing project, there could be 3 of 100 units that receive the benefit, as an example. So what could we do in lieu of that? I think that's a question for us to think about. If those units are individually metered, does that mean we could assign the benefit to the meter and deliver them savings to that meter and that unit? Maybe. Maybe there's a recommendation to think about communicating this challenge to PURA, whereby the EDCs may be willing to take the 100 units of that affordable housing and apply the subscriber savings to the entire building, thereby allowing for the building occupants to receive, some form of, construction energy project. So this isn't a silver bullet by any means, but there would be challenges to making this work for tenants. Let me see if
Yep.
EDC colleagues is Isabel have comments.
Yeah, I think that's right, Brian. And, it becomes a kind of question of, at that point, the benefit gets tied to the property, whereas the Scaf credit, as it, is originally designed, can travel with that tenant. So that's just one consideration that we would need to think through is, we'd have to figure out how to kind of get that assigned credit to stay with the meter, or whoever kind of moved into the property afterwards, who's going to be receiving the benefits of the energy improvements made at that either rental unit or owner occupied property.
I think that that's the critical key here is, well, actually part of the key messaging is that the benefit will be tied to the property. Therefore, the landlord feels good about making not only the investment in the building, but to also promote the program, because they're going to get something back for it, versus this concept of the benefit going to the tenant, where some landlords care about their tenants and some, have different ideas. So I think that that's the key message there.
Great. Isabel, and EDC colleagues, we could probably communicate this to Pura as the challenge, right? That, and to the extent we have ways of thinking about it, I know our Scaf subscriber savings are, we have a limited amount of them, but in the context of this problem, maybe there's another way of thinking about it in terms of the property versus the meter. Just something for us to flag.
I think question number 5 here is a good one. I don't know if anyone here on a call could maybe address that one.
So let me explain what the question is getting at. And this is something that Vicki brought up as well, which is this would be an optional program, right? So a subscriber who wins the lottery and gets in would have the option of devoting their savings to a program like this. So it would be a choice. Now, assuming that choice is very successful and people like it, that will create more demand for energy efficiency programs. Given that use case, imagine more people coming into that use case because of Scaf helping create that demand. How would that cause issues with the CLNM budget? Just to clarify the background there.
Yeah, Brian, this is Ron. Just to chime in on this, I think a lot would depend upon also, how many customers we're going to be coming through the Scaf program with these upgrades. I'd love to be able to say that there would never be an issue, but if every single customer was participating, our budgets are not infinite, so that could create some stress. But given what I've seen for the level of participation, I don't necessarily foresee an issue with supporting this effort from an energy efficiency perspective. To me, the concerns lie more with what was expressed earlier, where you're taking a look at the challenges associated with serving a rental property where either only a few of the customers are participating, or you have a renter who's looking at essentially giving up their 20-year worth of bill credits, no matter where they live, in exchange for an upgrade to the property that they're renting today. The concern I would have is that the right way to promote something to a low to moderate income customer, because they would lose that credit should they end up having to leave that property for whatever reason.
Great point.
really great point, and it prompts me to want to even poll our program users to get a sense of what their thinking would be on that, so that we could have actual customer feedback and data.
Yeah. We could, maybe we can just put that as a possibility. Isabel, what I'm thinking there on Brenda's comment is maybe with the list of beneficiaries in rounds 1 and round 2, year 1, year 2, when they come online, we can do that questionnaire to get a sense of, the challenges and opportunities. We'd have to have the right language in the questionnaire, make sure we nail it, not too academic, more real.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Isabel, this is a question for you, and you might have reviewed this, but how will the Scaf benefit appear on customer bills? Will there be an explanation on bill so that folks maybe remember what they signed up for, or maybe even opted out of?
Yeah, Brenda, there is. We have a little kind of blurb on the side of the bill that explains that the credit that they are seeing is due to their participation in the Scaf program, and then it appears at the bottom of the bill in kind of a section that's called Other Charges and Credits, and it says Scaf credit there. I can share an example of the bill with you so you can see what it looks like.
That would be great. I think it really just boils down to information and people being able to digest all of it, to want to sign on and be adopters.
Yeah, and kind of one of the challenges too is the opt-out nature of the program. It's been designed that way because just statistically, customers have a higher likelihood of participating in a program if they're enrolled in an opt-out manner. But it is a bit confusing trying to explain to customers, you were just kind of randomly selected to receive this bill credit. So then also the challenge of kind of presenting them with these two options, do you want this credit or do you want some deeper energy efficiency measures, is something that we would have to definitely think through how we would present that to the customer.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that piece because, people have long memories, and with there being bad actors in the third-party supply market, they might associate this with that if the information is clear.
Yep.
Brian, Steve, just a quick question. I know that there were a couple of scenarios of measures added. I know the costs are kind of outdated. Do you think there's other measures that we may consider, or that, from today's perspective, is there anything that's changed since then for the interest in those measures? Are those still the right ones?
Cool. So great question. So I'll try to tie that into number 2. So would subscribers have a choice in terms of participation? Yes, they would have a choice. They could stay on the savings or participate in the program. And then 2, the use of the subscriber savings, what could they use it for? Arrearage, weatherization, question mark. So I think what we've tried to do is to just tee up an important scenario, which is the weatherization to kind of climate protection scenario. To the extent the broader policy objective of using those subscriber savings to do something else that benefits that participant, we would look to the Cnlm, the EEB, DEEP to define that. If we went the bond route, it wouldn't. Our role would just be to try to front load the cash, but in terms of the use of those proceeds, we would look to you all to design something that made sense to give customers options within the context of the policy objectives you're trying to achieve. And again, it doesn't have to be bonds, which is the point Vicki was raising. Maybe there's another mechanism to fund projects. But yeah, I think the types of things they can use it for would be up to you all programmatically. And you'd want to keep it, I think you'd want to keep it simple, right? Because we want to make sure that the benefits here exceed the cost of trying to do something like this. I mean, the utilities have worked really hard to make this program simple. And now what we're doing is we're adding another layer here to see if we can use the economic value of those savings to do more and deliver more value. That may be easier said than done.
Very good. Do you want to talk about number 3 a little bit, Brian, too? Because I see that as another potential option too, is you redirect them, but then the direct participant may not take advantage of it. But I think what you're getting at with number 3 is that you would take those benefits, send them to energy efficiency for use for other customers, right?
Yeah, so this would be the challenge. I think in this context, just getting to this, the subscriber who wins in the lottery case, we couldn't, I would say we shouldn't direct any of those economic benefits outside of themselves because they effectively won it. So any money that came back as a result of any directed bill savings should inure back to that participant. I think we'd want that as a goal because they have effectively won in the option here. That would be my suggestion. I think we'd have a hard time making the case, especially when you give the option of choice to that participant. If we said you want to participate, and if they say yes, I think they're assuming they're going to receive the benefit from whatever happens next.
Very good, makes sense.
But the idea would.
This is Lonnie. I just wanted to say also, and I know you're probably already anticipating this, but it just feels like this whole thing needs a community outreach component with friendly ambassadors to really talk to people, because nobody understands these concepts. I mean, we talk about them all day, every day, but to kind of take it, to where it's delivered and to help people have a comfort level with it all. It feels like beyond just sort of having on a piece of paper, going and having people participate and ask questions, and as I say, have friendly ambassadors in the room who can kind of help. This is something Brenda's really good at. To kind of build that into the system, because this is a big deal.
I agree, and I also agree with Brian's notion about there being customer choice. So would arrearages be included as a benefit? Like if the customer wanted to use it to perhaps draw down a high balance on their utility bill? Which I don't find that to be a systemic solution to energy affordability, but just wanted to flag that as a question.
I think it's a great one, and the science geek in me is like, you'd want to optimize for the arrearage to then direct measures on site so that we don't get back into the arrearage situation. But
Right.
But yeah, I think there's, these are the sorts of questions that I think conceptually, if PURA were to acknowledge the ability for participants to transfer the subscriber savings to inure benefit today for them to do something, that I think we want to defer to, the policymakers or the guidance of the EEB, DEEP, whomever, to make sure that those options, those use of proceeds, are directed in a way that advances the policy objectives.
And there's a great question in the chat from Letitia. Will a recording of this be provided to allow us to gather community input?
Fantastic. Yes. So this is being recorded, and I will, on the Green Bank website for every meeting, we have the recordings there. So this is available there. So yes, we'll make sure we do a follow-up link so you can see them.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Anything on 4? I'd be interested, like Steve, Ron, Joel, like, this is, to Vicky's point, do we have to do all this rigmarole of the bonding, which I get, right? This is kind of the way of creating, all that future value into today, and you have to go through all the discounting and the bond issuances and all that sort of stuff. Is there an easier way that we could assign those subscriber savings to something, like maybe for partial, heat loan payment?
Right, that's an interesting concept. If you're able to take that bond up front and you get the cash directly, that would be an interesting one, because right now the heat loan is statutorily capped at the $15,000 max loan, and also the customer has to typically put down a minimum of 10% down payment. So I think that would definitely be pretty interesting as a concept.
Yeah, and just to add to what Steve said, Brian, I mean, I think that could be one way of trying to overcome the challenge we have with especially heat pump installations with that $15,000 cap, because that has been a barrier for that heat loan.
And then the down payment, like the subscriber, the nominal value of the subscriber savings over time could be justified as the down payment if they were to direct it to the on-bill repayment for the heat loan, couldn't it?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, that's essentially their credit. So why wouldn't that be their down payment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that sounds
think
good.
that's a fantastic solution. Yeah. It sounds like there's so many different possibilities here and solutions that could really benefit the customer. So I'm hoping that this conversation turns into an actual concept, and that we maybe a year from now are talking about getting this going.
So timing wise is let me set something up, and then think about, I think we have an August timeline here. So my thought would be taking this feedback today and doing some sort of joint memo that gets submitted into the Pura docket, where we're going to be redlining a technical manual that would effectively divert these subscriber savings to something, the heat loan as an example for. So that's the technical part, is the red line. But I think sitting on top of it, if we had a joint memo that communicated the things that we would want Pura to consider, and we flagged a bunch of them: community outreach, the maximum loan value, the 10% down payment on heat loan. We flagged a bunch of them. If we can put that as an attachment on in as well, I think Pura, if this is something, again, I think right now we're just trying to get the policy to be able to have an option. We still don't know if the benefits exceed the costs here. This may be more difficult than we think it is, and therefore the value isn't as much as we're trying to deliver to those participants. But at least having a mechanism that allows for the assignment of those subscriber savings to deliver more subscriber savings would be the goal.
Yeah, and Brian, that's another thing, I guess, to think about is, is there a certain threshold of the number of customers that we would need to sign up for this option to, make the whole thing work?
Yeah. Great. Very cool.
Brian, you noted in August timeline, but what else would you need from members here to help you out with this effort?
So I think, documentation wise, Isabel, EDC colleagues, I think we can get there with this conversation today. I think given the chat, we want to consider having a forum. This is technical wonky stuff, but to move beyond that, to figure out, maybe it is the simple recommendation of a poll and a survey, Brenda, as you suggested, with existing, to do that. But I do feel like we should open up a conversation largely, somehow, I'm not an expert in doing that, but to get more feedback. Letitia's weighing in here. I'm sure there are others who have feedback too. Again, with the goal being, how do we achieve more policy objective while delivering more subscriber savings to participants? So yeah, I guess a next step would be, beyond the paperwork, would be a public engagement. Yeah.
I think it would be good to flag this for the recently formed CJAC committee, the Connecticut Environmental Justice Working Group. They had a kickoff meeting last night, and it's a very well-rounded group of folks. And I would hate to miss the opportunity to not bring this to their attention. You know, we often miss the energy burden and energy justice conversation in the environmental justice conversation, which you know, they're very closely connected. So I'm happy to raise this to Dr. Mitchell, who is the chair of that, and Commissioner Dykes, who is also the co-chair. If you think that that would be a good, you know, good place to flag this, and maybe even just get some feedback from those members.
What do you think is in terms of our timing? We could probably, if they said yes, we can do this maybe in mid to late July. Would that be enough time for us to make the filing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Brian, we can work, you know, outside of this to kind of make the modifications that we would need to the program documents, and then just share it with folks for feedback. I think my interpretation of Pura's direction was more so, you know, file these red lines that would enable the concept, but it sounded like they wanted to have future, you know, docket proceedings to discuss the, you know, implementation details. So I don't think we have to have everything completely figured out by the time that we file the red lines. It's more so just a launching point, in my opinion.
There we go. Okay, so that's great. What Isabel is saying there, we can work through all the technical language on, you know, the program manuals to enable this conversation to happen. Then Pura could open up. We could even recommend probably in that is that Pura open up a public engagement process with CJAC, for example. That would just kind of take the immediate pressure off of us and just focus in on getting the red line in.
Yeah, I like that. And Letitia also comments that this is in line with the GC3 process, which is also kicking off soon. So yeah, I'm liking the direction this is going in, Brian.
Perfect. Okay, I think we've got the guidance. Isabel, we can connect with Brenda as chair here of Joint Committee just on, you know, what's come out of here. Maybe we can document that just so we memorialize the guidance. And then, you know, our utility colleagues here, Joel, Ron, Steve, will just, you know, confer with you on the red line changes to the program manual. I think they're really modest. They're really the assignment of the subscriber savings. But maybe I'm overstating it. But I think we've got our charge. Cool. I think it was great.
Okay. Is this a good? All right, there we go. We're moving on with the agenda. We're going to get an update on the legislative session from Brian. Good man.
That would be Mr. Farnan.
Yes.
I got all anxious. I was hoping that nice good man was meant for me. I got all excited. But good afternoon, everyone. So it was a successful legislative session. Just want to run through a few of the bills, and I'll have Brian kind of he can join in too, especially about one of the biggest ones I came through, which is the Connecticut Clean Air Act. Before we get to that one, CPACE. So we were able to change the CPACE legislation to enable climate resilience and EV charger projects. The hiccup here related to our savings to investment ratio. So many of you know this, but just in case. So CPACE projects, they're designed so that the estimated energy cost savings over the effective use of the qualified improvement, they need to exceed the financing amount, i.e. the savings to investment ratio has to be greater than 1. When you're dealing with a resiliency project or an EV charger project, there's not that energy savings component, per se. So, but we wanted CPACE to be a potential option for those types of financing. So we were excited to get that change made, and that really dovetails really nicely into our expanded scope at the Green Bank. Another big thing that happened was that basically for the clean energy tariffs, those were doubled and allowed for larger projects. So when you NRES, that's non-residential energy solutions, and the Scaf program, we just talked about that, but that's the shared clean energy facilities. So that's community solar. So that was another great win for the clean energy sector. Another big occurrence was that the zero carbon electric sector, the targets were moved to 2040 and moved up. So that was kind of a push to really kind of get us there, which was exciting. The hydrogen task force. So this is kind of this is a really exciting time when it comes to hydrogen. Connecticut is part of a larger regional effort with New York State and others. You also have President Biden's infrastructure bill, which is going to open up a fair amount of opportunities. And even in this defense production language that was used to enable solar to be produced or be able to be procured, at this time of supply chain issues, actually fuel cells were included within that also. So we're excited that Brian Garcia is going to be the chair of that task force. I think we were voluntold, but no, we were excited to take that on. But it's an exciting opportunity for us. And then the Edc Storage and Reliability, this pilot, and again, obviously we saw over the last 10, 15 years this huge increase in solar PV, and now we have this opportunity to see hopefully a similar type of trajectory when it comes to storage and reliability. And the beauty of, in my opinion, of storage and reliability, the storage programs, is that there's even a greater benefit to the entire grid in grid reliability. So this is a good thing. And one side item I would talk about too is that there is also a exemption for there was an exemption that applied to new nuclear, and there was basically a carve out, to put it in plain language, for the ability at the Dominion site to potentially over the next 5-10 years to enable Dominion to do some of the kind of the small nuclear, which seems to be a new technology. And obviously from a clean energy perspective, that will help us address issues with climate change. So with that, I will turn it over to Brian, and he can kind of give an update on what's going on with the Connecticut Clean Air Act and some of the exciting things there.
Yeah. Just let me talk about the Hydrogen Study Task Force real quickly, and then we'll get there. So we're going to launch the Hydrogen Task Force on July 12th. That will be the launch meeting from 10 to 12 noon. We're going to have a meeting of the task force, which is comprised of various ex officio members, Deep, Pura, UConn, the Director of Energy at CCAT and the Green Bank, and a number of political appointees from a variety of different stakeholder sets. So that hopefully will launch on the 12th of July, and then every month, the second Tuesday of every month from 10 to 12, we'll have the task force meetings and have interspersed working group meetings as they all dig into various things like the production and use of green hydrogen, the infrastructure, policies and funding, and the like. The legislation is pretty explicit in terms of what they want in the study. So our role is to facilitate a good study, a good review, good feedback and recommendations for the E&T committee next year. On 22-25, so as I say from time to time, I feel like every 10 years there's a seminal bill in clean energy that happens in Connecticut. Public Act 1180 was one of them as an example. I do feel like this Clean Air Act is potentially this decadal policy for Connecticut. Its focus is on medium and heavy duty vehicles. We all know that the transportation sector is the #1 emitting sector in Connecticut. We have to really grapple and get our arms around it. So there's a lot of things that happen in this act, but from the Green Bank's perspective, one of the things that we were really advocating for in the context of electric school buses was first to extend the contract period from 5 years to 10 years. When you do that for electric school buses, you make the financeability better for electric school buses to begin to come online. You know, really no different than how we think about power purchase agreements with solar. The longer you extend to the useful life of the asset, the more likely you are to attract financing to deliver that service. So that was included. We were excited by that. At the tail end of session, I did get a call from the commissioner and the legislative leaders of the Environment Committee, Commissioners Haskell and Cohen, about trying to pull the final piece together, which was, I think many folks know that the regional greenhouse gas initiatives, as the cap has come down, allowance prices have gone up. So, the Green Bank's 23% of allowance proceeds historically was anywhere between $3 to $5 million. This year it will be $10 million, so effectively a doubling. So across the board, us, Cnlm, DEEP, everyone's going to get a doubling of those incentives. But what we worked with the legislative leaders on was that if the Green Bank's use of proceeds, which is currently a bit of a technical policy change, but the Green Bank's use of 23% is directed to class 1 renewable energy to be consistent with the RPS. There was a change made that allows the Green Bank to use RGGI proceeds for clean energy, our clean energy definition, without being able to support anything that supports fossil fuels. So, anaerobic digesters, fuel cells, we can't use it for those sorts of things. But within our clean energy definition is alternative fuel vehicles and associated infrastructure, a la electric school buses and their infrastructure, recharging infrastructure. So working with DEEP and the legislative leaders, that overage will be directed to DEEP to support vouchers specifically for electric school buses in environmental justice communities. If we all took a step back and looked at the targets, 100% in EJ communities by 2030 and 100% in all Connecticut communities by 2040, that's 8,000 buses. Pretty much 99.99% of those buses use fossil fuels today. The delta between conventional and electric is significant, so much so that it's probably currently about $2.8 billion. So as much as we love the electric school bus program that the EPA's put on, the $5 billion program with the state match, that's only going to get us 5% of the goal. So we're going to become a very active participant in trying to raise more private investment to help the state achieve its electric school bus targets. So just a few more added thoughts to 22-25 that Brian was covering. There may be other bills. These were just kind of the bills we presented to the Green Bank board. I don't know if Joel, Steve, Ron, others have any others you wanted to raise, but these were things that we spoke about with our board.
Thanks, Brian. Nothing to add from Eversource.
Thank you so much. If no one has any questions, we can move forward.
Great, thank you for that update, both Brian Fernan and Brian Garcia. So we're going to move on with our next agenda item, and I think I'll turn that back over to you, Brian Garcia.
All right. We're coming down to the wire here. So this is both us and the EEB's update on where we are on our respective comp plans. So the Green Bank board every year in June reviews and approves the targets for subsequent years, the targets and budget. We just had our board meeting last Friday, so I'm just going to quickly review the FY23 targets for our programs. We run incentive programs. Sergio Carrillo is our director of incentive programs. These are programs where we would in general provide incentives up front with being cost recovered over time as those technologies deliver the performance that we expect. So for example, what you don't see on this table is that the RCIP program is no longer a goal setting. We achieved our target at the end of 2021. We deployed 350 megawatts of residential solar in the state. That generates renewable energy credits. The utilities purchase those RECs from the Green Bank through a master purchase agreement. Those production of RECs generate the revenue for the incentives and the Green Bank's administration of the program. So that's how we think about managing incentive programs, is delivering the performance and getting paid for delivering that performance that's expected based on the public policy. So in the battery storage realm, I think it was 21-38, I forget the number, but it was the battery storage program that passed last year. It established a 1,000 megawatt by 2030 target and suggested that the utilities can co-administer a program with the Green Bank on behind the meter incentives. So these are effectively our targets for the commercial and industrial customers and the residential customers. So within the first 3 years of the program, 2022, 23, and 24, we've got 50 megawatt targets for both residential and non-residential for a total of 100 megawatts. The commercial and industrial projects has reached its cap. It reached it really quickly. We expect that those projects are going to take a lot of time for interconnection to work through with the utilities. That's why you don't see the targets counting there, because the projects have to be deployed and meeting the dispatch requirements of the program in order for them to be counted. So we anticipate that there's going to be a process, an interconnection process that's going to take long, this fiscal year to work through before we would pay any upfront incentives. The Green Bank administers the upfront incentive for the program, and the EDCs administer the ongoing performance-based incentive, which is really a way to dispatch the batteries during peak times during the summer and winter months to reduce peak demand, which should result in lower electric rates for everyone. So a really cool design program. So you see our resi targets there. 500 projects. This is in the RSIP, we were probably at 7,000 projects a year. We're just beginning to develop a battery storage market for residential. This is based on my observations, one of the most complicated technologies to try to build into a system. But I'm confident that we'll be able to develop and support a market that will be good over time in terms of deploying battery storage. The Smarty loan also fits underneath our incentive programs. We'll have an update later on from Madeline in terms of a special offer that we've got going on. But here we're targeting about 1,000 loans, about $15 million of capital. We've got a limited time special offer to buy down interest rates. We're also going to be incorporating environmental infrastructure into the Smarty loan. I'll talk about that in a second. So these are our incentive programs. Our financing programs are managed by Mackie Dykes, our Vice President of Financing Programs. These are our typical programs that we offer, but I really want to focus on one, which is our Small Business Energy Advantage partnership with Eversource, which has just been great. We're looking to further support that program to reach public entities, municipalities, the state to ensure that they're taking full advantage of the Energy Opportunities Program and on-bill repayment. But what a great program to be able to use your utility bill to pay for the gap for energy efficiency. So a number of things here just in terms of our various products. But I guess one thing I would note, and actually you'll see it on the next slide, this is probably like a view that just shows the differences a bit between how the Green Bank administers programs versus, say, the Cnlm. In the case of our financing programs, we do provide the capital and expect the capital to be paid back over time at a certain interest rate. So these are the targets for our investments that will occur based on closings over FY23. And we use the public revenues that we receive from the Clean Energy Fund, which is about 25 million, and RGGI, which will be 5.2 million given the statute that I just spoke about. There'll be more there, but the more will actually go to electric school buses in EJ communities. And then the cash on hand will be investing in projects that will deliver interest income. So interest income is important to us. That will come back to us over time based on a weighted average return. That interest income will help cover our operating expenses. So that's an approach that we've been working towards specifically after the sweeps in 2017. And then just kind of coming out of energy for a second into environmental infrastructure. Last year, Public Act 21-115 passed that expanded the Green Bank scope beyond clean energy to include environmental infrastructure. So we've been in conversations over the last 9 months to try to understand all the various pieces of environmental infrastructure. By statute, it's a lot, and they're very diverse areas. So we spent probably 3 months of time in each of these areas: parks and recreation, land conservation, agriculture, water. We're currently in water. We'll be moving to waste and recycling in next quarter, July through September. And the goal is to assemble all of the information that we're gathering, including stakeholder feedback, public policy reports, into primers that help inform our board and stakeholders about the opportunities presented by the Green Bank model applying to environmental infrastructure. And of course, cross-cutting across all of these sectors will be our lens of climate change. So not only will greenhouse gas mitigations be front and center, but also making ourselves more resilient to the impacts of climate. It's here, we're all feeling it. We need to help people become more resilient to it, and specifically vulnerable communities. So we have our 40% of vulnerable communities target that's embedded in all of this. So ultimately, in July, we'll have a draft comp plan that will go to the board that will look something like what we submitted in 2020 around, this. We named the comp plan back then Green Bonds Us. We issue green bonds. We sell them to citizens across the country. We won big awards for that. But green, the environment, bonds us, it unites us. The environment is an important issue that can bring equity front and center and actually help us as a country become better Americans by addressing equity and confronting climate at the same time. That's why we have a vision of a planet protected by the love of humanity. So this is coming to the board in July, but that's an overview of where we are. And just for those on the line, I think we have just kind of new folks. The Green Bank and the EDCs have worked to align our agendas, our quarterly agendas for the Joint Committee, so that we can, on a quarterly basis, provide feedback for our respective plans. In this one, the June is a report out for the Green Bank of where we landed. And now the Stacy, I think, will take over and present the CLNM update. But happy to take questions.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions for Brian? Okay, go ahead, Stacy, take it away.
All right, Stacy, you there? You may be on mute. There you are. We can't hear you. I can see you're unmuted, but I can't hear you. Why don't you chat in, Stacy? There's also a phone number you can dial into. If that works, we can try that. There you go, perfect. Give Stacy a second.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Perfect.
Wonderful. I'm sorry about that. So just to kick off, there's some people here that may not know who I am. I'm Stacey Sherwood. I'm from the Energy Futures Group. also known as EFG, and I'm serving as the lead technical consultant on behalf of the Energy Efficiency Board. I assumed this role in April from Glenn Reed, who's also from EFG, after shadowing him since October of last year. Glenn's done a fabulous job as the lead technical consultant for the past several years, and as well as onboarding me to the team itself. So Glenn's easing his way into retirement by stepping down from the lead technical consultant role. However, he'll still be assisting the team by providing support on the residential EMB work. So with that, I'll get started on some board updates. The first up is that there's a vacancy available on the board. It is the residential representative position, formerly held by Brenda Watson, who has accomplished a lot in her role during that time and in helping the Energized CT programs move forward. And we're happy to still be able to work with Brenda in her capacity as the chair of this joint committee. So for those who are interested in that position with the Energy Efficiency Board, the application process is open until tomorrow at 5 p.m. with DEEP. For the next item, as noted during the last joint committee meeting, there were 4 new board members that joined the EEB in February. Since that time, the board technical consultants have been working on conducting onboarding sessions. 2 have already been provided. One was on the EEB and other stakeholders such as DEEP and their roles with Energized CT. And the second one was a high-level overview of the Cnlm plan itself. There are 2 remaining onboarding sessions happening in July, one to discuss the C&I programs and the other to discuss the residential programs, as noted on the slide. And our final update is that the board's diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, also referred to as the DEI consultant, started in June, with a kickoff meeting occurring at the June board meeting. The DEI consultant is currently working with various parties, including the EEB technical consultants, DEEP, and the companies as well, to assess the metrics that are established for evaluating the success of the Energized CT programs and to plan to provide feedback in the latter half of this year or in early 2023 with additional metrics and how we can change those going forward. On to the next slide. I'm just going to go quickly over, the goals of the Conservation and Load Management Plan. Just as a reminder, we have energy affordability, so reducing the energy burden on customers through lower bills and increased resiliency and energy security. The second goal is decarbonization, so reducing greenhouse gas emissions through the investment of high efficiency and low carbon technologies within the building sector. And the third goal is equity. So this is ensuring that the benefits of energy efficiency programs reach all communities, customer types, and market segments. And there's a particular focus on disadvantaged neighborhoods. Moving on to the next slide. So with the reminder of what the goals are for the 2022-2024 CNL plan, I'm happy to announce that the plan itself was approved by DEEP since the last joint committee meeting. On June 1st, 2022, DEEP issued its final determination after receiving public input on its draft determination that was released in April 2022. That final determination released by DEEP includes 25 conditions for the companies to incorporate into their plans, with items such as removing condensing equipment rebates, braiding CNLM funds with federal funding opportunities, to also reporting requirements going forward. So in addition to that approval that came from DEEP, the draft determination itself included some insight into the development of a weatherization definition and a Connecticut-specific cost-effectiveness test. While they have been discussed in the draft determination, DEEP has not yet issued a final determination on those 2 items. And the companies are working to incorporate these conditions of approval and the final determination itself into the 2022-2024 plan, with discussions being held at either the board or committee level meetings going forward, depending on how much of a deep dive the conversation may entail. Moving on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, the companies are incorporating DEEP's conditions of approval into its 2023 plan update to the 2022-2024 Cnlm plan itself. This slide here shows items that will be updated, including, as I said, aligning the plan with the final determination from DEEP, adjusting the residential and C&I portfolios accordingly, including savings and budget adjustments from the original plan. The plan will also include updates to assumptions based on EMB reports that were provided. by June 30th, and the companies are updating their program savings document for 2023, which serves as the technical resource manual in Connecticut. On the next slide, we have the timeline for the 2023 plan update. So in the month of June, we developed this timeline that we have presented here, and we presented this timeline also at the June 8th board meeting. The EEB technical consultants are working with the companies on the updated text outline and draft budget tables during this month. And the companies are also working with the evaluator administrator on meeting the June 30th deadline for evaluation studies that will be included as part of the 2023 program savings document. For the month of July, we'll be holding the joint Energy Efficiency Board and Deep Public Input session on July 13th, and this will be occurring from noon to 1 p.m. on that date to discuss the updated outline and to receive feedback. During the month of July, the companies will also be working to develop the initial draft of the plans and budget tables. In August, the companies are going to be working to develop that second draft, including the input from the public input session, and we'll be providing a review of that document by August 5th in advance of the August 10th board meeting. In September, the companies are going to be working on their third draft to incorporate feedback. In addition, this will be when DEEP and EEB hold their second joint public input session to receive feedback from stakeholders and the public. At the September 14th board meeting, the EEB will hold a vote on the budget tables. And then in October, the EEB will vote on the plan text at the October 12th EEB meeting, at which point the companies will prepare the final update of the Cnlm and the 2023 program savings document to be filed with DEEP on November 1st. On the next slide. So knowing this update process, I thought it would be a helpful reminder to identify how the Green Bank supports and interacts with the Cnlm. So currently the Green Bank has integrated residential solar installs with energized CT programs by requiring HES audits or home energy solution audits. So I would appreciate any feedback anyone may have about coordination we have to date or ideas of financing opportunities we should be exploring going forward. So some ideas that I know have been identified in the past is Green Bank following DEEP's guidance provided in phase 1 of the E3 or equity and energy efficiency proceedings with the Green Bank. So working with the companies to explore interest-free financing options for HES and HES-IE customers to cover expenses of health and safety barriers, which can exclude a home from participating in those programs. Second option is pairing renewable and storage opportunities. In July 2023, the companies plan to offer an all-electric new construction program. So I think that would be a great pairing opportunity for renewable and storage to be added. So exploring financing or grant opportunities for that. And finally, with existing homes, pairing those renewable and storage options with heat pump installations, perhaps lowering the cost for those switching from natural gas HVAC to a heat pump. So what ideas, I want to open this up for discussion quickly. What ideas does the Green Bank or others have? And how can the EEB assist the Green Bank in the development of such options?
Cool.
Any comments?
Stacy, this is Brian. I'll respond to some of it. There's a lot here, but in terms of the storage and renewables policies, the behind the meter benefits to families and businesses with a focus on low income, affordable housing, small business, large business, et cetera, all behind the meter. Those programs are now either administered or co-administered by the EDCs, and the EDCs administer the CLNM. So we co-administer the storage program with the EDCs, and the Green Bank has been the lead advocate to require energy efficiency within these programs. HES-IE, for example, in the renewable behind the meter programs, and storage for those who aren't doing renewables. So we're definitely advocating there. The pairing of HPs with PV and storage, HPs, forgive me, not sure what that is, with PV and storage, yeah, I think the full home solution is actually what should be done. I feel like with where the policies are, where the compensation levels are, and with the EDCs administering the programs, that there's a lot of internal coordination that can happen there. And our goal is to fill the gap with financing where the market isn't. We don't want to step on private markets, but we want to engage them into the market. That's what's allowed the Green Bank to deliver multiples of other people's money into the market. I'd focus in there. And then on the evaluation of financing activities, I could say we can like punt that to our respective teams working in the different sectors, residential, non-residential sectors, to take that up based on the different financing products that we co-administer. Those are my thoughts there.
Okay. Yeah, and I think also, evaluating how the financing opportunities are kind of helping the companies reach their Cnlm goals would be useful. Are we getting into the neighborhoods that we're looking for? Are the financing options available helping and assisting those customers, whether it be on the residential or the commercial side, specifically small business? So evaluating that going forward and how can we complement it given the budgets that we have for the Cnlm. So that's also something that I'm looking for. Did anyone else have any other comments? The companies?
Nope, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think these are all good items, Stacy.
All right, thank you guys, and I'll pass it back over to you, Brian.
I think we're running down to the end here, Brenda.
Yep. Thanks, Stacy, for that. And we're going to turn it over back to Brian for the other update here, other business.
Yeah, actually, just quickly, any financing updates? I know the Smarty Loan team is on, and I would invite Madeline, I think, or Ralph to talk about the special offer. And then Steve, I don't know if there's anything else, or Ron, that you want to raise on any of the other financing things. Just briefly, we're not digging in this time, but any financing updates. Let me turn it to Ralph or Madeline here.
Sure thing. We didn't actually coordinate on who's going to speak. Sorry, Ralph. I'm happy to take this. So Ralph joined our team about a month ago now, and will be replacing Joe Bonanata, for those of you who knew him as our regional director for the Smarty Loan, really focused on Connecticut. The great news is Ralph actually comes to us from one of our participating credit unions, Mutual Security, where he kind of was our internal champion for the program. So very familiar with his program, probably more than I am in many ways. So we're excited to have him, and he'll be taking kind of these meetings over going forward. We just wanted to announce for you all that starting July 1st, so Friday, we are launching a summer special offer, either $299 at 5, 7, or 10 years, or $199 for customers below 100% state median income. The eligible measures will require heat pumps and home energy solutions, or home energy solutions income eligible, as we have required in the past with heat pump special offers. Heat pumps will include air source heat pumps, any sort of mini splits, ducted or ductless, ground source heat pumps, heat pump water heaters. Battery storage up to $25,000 at those rates, and EV charging equipment. If customers want to take that holistic home approach, as we were discussing earlier, they're able to also finance those measures again under one loan, but it will be financed at a blended rate, so they won't receive the $299 for, say, windows in this situation. They'll receive a blended rate and then make one loan payment moving forward. And that's it.
Thank you, Madeline. Anything else, Steve, Ron,
Yeah.
Joel?
Actually, I did have a question for Madeline before she goes too far, if I could. Madeline, I see you have air source heat pumps. One of the things that we are looking at adding into our plan update would be air to water heat pumps, as well as solar thermal domestic hot water rebate. We're investigating. It's not a definite yet, so we're just looking at, would that be able to be covered by the Smarty as a eligible item?
Yeah, so currently both of those are eligible items. They're not very popular, but they are eligible items.
There's no
And then-
rebates either, so.
Correct. yes, those are eligible items. And once you guys have determined kind of what the eligibility will look like and if that's a priority for you, we can run a special offer potentially on that or find some way to work together to kind of help promote that amongst contractors.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're aligned. So thank you.
Yes.
And Brian, it's Steve. I was going to add real quick. You already mentioned the Green Bank partnership with Amalgamated Bank and Eversource on the small business financing. Just wanted to let you know we extended that working with Mackie. I know he's not here today. We extended that another 3 years till 2024. End of 2024. I guess 2.5 years almost. But and we're also going to look to add EV charging stations and battery storage to the financing as well. Working on a request to DEEP. Okay.
Very cool. Good stuff, Steve. That's the kind of across silo stuff. That's fantastic. Cool to hear. And then I think we had one last thing we wanted to share. Brenda, you wanna tee this up, or you want me to tee it up? I'm happy to follow or lead, whatever you want.
No, I'm happy to talk about this. Largely due to Brian's encouragement, Operation Fuel and the Greater Bridgeport Community Enterprises worked from the period of last fall, I think it was around September, through still now actually, on bringing the Justice 40 initiative to Connecticut. We submitted a proposal that would provide us with technical assistance over a 1-year period, or it might be longer than that, to help us in the community, along with the business community, develop locally based solutions that would help not only drive down energy burden, but make the community a lot greener. So it's an environmental justice strategy to work to undo some of the harms that have been caused over the past, several years. And we're really excited about Bridgeport making it to the list of other projects that are occurring across the country. We were initially turned down, but we decided to, ask the question why. Why was our proposal denied? And we were able to get squeezed in, and so we're really happy and excited about launching this. I don't have a timeline in front of me, but I give a lot of credit to Adrian Well, the president and CEO of Greater Bridgeport Community Enterprises, along with the business community and activist community in Bridgeport. So Phoenix rising for sure.
And I would just add, you're being humble too. I feel like when we were let down initially, you were like, let's kind of step it up and let's go back to them and ask them why we weren't selected. And that form of resilience to me was just inspiring. I've never seen that before. And you guys got a meeting of the DOE officials, and I just sat back and watched you and Adrian power away on why this project was important. And lo and behold, you were added. So just an incredible story of resilience, and really, I think, speaks a lot to, beyond the paper. Adrian, Brenda put together a proposal on paper, but if you actually talk to them, you could actually get a clearer view for what they were interested in. So I think a piece of advice for the DOE is, don't make every proposal just on paper. Talk to people, because you're going to learn things differently. But just awesome work, Brenda. Just, now the big hard work starts, but you're now one of Shalonda Baker's inaugural communities, and it's just cool to see.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And no is a complete sentence, but tell me why you want to deny me. So we're out of time, but I did want to squeeze in I believe Letitia from the public has a question or comment, and I wanted to allow her the opportunity to get that in before we adjourn. Letitia, if you're still on, you've got the floor.
Thanks, Brenda. Greatly appreciate it. So I'm curious on the joint committee, and I apologize because I wasn't allowed into the meeting to see the full presentation. So I might be asking something that was possibly reviewed. Was there any discussion about the Green Bank's mission or effort to ensure reliability in our energy efficiency programs, which employ people of color in Connecticut, over 34,000 people working to ensure the programs which have been in energy burdens are stabilized and continue to run without stop starts, as was indicated as the #1 goal in Ned Lamont's energy transition plan, which identified 2 points of consensus with 100% vote. 1, stop diverting funds, expand programs, and 2, return the $176 million in diverted resources. I wonder if there's any way that the Green Bank's mission or vision might include supporting with a 0% interest loan or a forgivable loan of some sort to ensure we don't have working families who get turned away from energy saving services, which also create resilience in communities, protect human health, draw down air and water related pollution, and keep our grid stable to avoid issues like we saw in Texas. Thank you.
Great comment. Brenda, you want me to just a little response before we break up?
Also, again, for in the interest of time, you know, we're over, and I actually have to jump on another call. But if there's a way that maybe we could talk about that offline, unless you wanted to quickly, Brian, address that, and then we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, my only thought is, you know, statutorily, the language that the Green Bank really focuses in on is fostering the sustained orderly development of. And in the case of residential solar, it was the local solar market. In the case of battery storage, it's the local battery storage market. And those are statutorily spelled out. So we abide by that, the importance of local economic development. I hear you, Letitia, in terms of the stops and starts. It's like not only at bad times, but good times, you can have this happen. You know, I guess what I would say and offer up is that, you know, happy to think about this with you all and the EDCs, is you need to think about your program design in that sustained orderly development mindset. We did that for residential solar. You know, we didn't let that market be reliant on the incentive to operate. It was the largest per capita market in the entire Northeast, delivering $200 million of investment every year. And that's because we declined incentives over time and just managed the incentives so that we wouldn't be stuck, you know, supporting a market with ebbing and flowing. So happy to like think through that programmatically with you all in terms of thinking about it. But yeah, you know, the worst thing you can do to a workforce is to stop start. And, you know, we know that, but happy to provide some advice on how to think about it.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Brian.
your response. My hope, Brenda, is that the room that you're in, which is joint committee, including Green Bank and the EEB, would consider the impacts on the market rate residential ratepayers who pay for these programs, even the ones at Green Bank, through conservation load management, you know, taxes on our electric bills and gas bills. And I hope that since this room is about joint committee and jointly looking at problems, that the problems that are facing the EEB residential committee could be brought to this space, because this is the right space for it. And I'm worried that letting the last second of the meeting be that question, I'm the only one asking it, is remiss in the way that we serve ratepayers. But I do thank you for entertaining the question in the last minute of the meeting. And I respectfully hope to get a response for that before the budget runs out. Thank you.
Thanks, Letitia.
And maybe just a quick clarifier, because I'm looking at the comments. Just to be specific, the Green Bank receives $30 million on an annual basis, $25 million from the Clean Energy Fund and $5 million from RGGI. We try to turn that $30 million into $250, $300 million of investment by getting private investment in. So we take a little to try to achieve a lot. So we're not as big as the Cnlm. We do our best to bring in private capital in a smart way. So, you know, we're limited. We're not the solution to everything, but we're trying to solve a lot of clean energy policies in Connecticut, and you know, would lean on our colleagues at the Cnlm to lift you all up as well.
Thank you, Brian. With that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Any seconds? I'll go ahead and just adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you, Brenda.